This happened in the autumn of 2024. I was 26 and working as a field network auditor for a major telecommunications company in rural Washington state. My job was essentially to drive a specialized van equipped with signal testing gear to various hubs, those large gray metal cabinets you see on the side of the road, and ensure the fiber optic nodes were functioning correctly. Because the company didn't want to interfere with daytime internet traffic for testing, the majority of my work was done. This happened in the autumn of 2024. I was 26 and working as a field network auditor for a major telecommunications company in rural Washington state. My job was essentially to drive a specialized van equipped with signal testing gear to various hubs, those large gray metal cabinets you see on the side of the road, and ensure the fiber optic nodes were functioning correctly. Because the company didn't want to interfere with daytime internet traffic for testing, the majority of my work was done between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. I spent hours driving down winding mountain roads where the only light came from my high beams and the flickering green LEDs inside the cabinets I was inspecting. The anomaly at Hub 407. In late October, I was assigned to a remote stretch of Highway 12 near the edge of a national forest. The area was notorious for dead zones, which is why the company had installed Hub 407, a high-capacity node tucked into a small gravel turnout near an old rusted bridge. The first night I visited Hub 407, the system gave me a physical breach alert. This usually means a lock is loose or a technician forgot to latch the door. When I pulled up at 1:30 a.m., I found the cabinet door wide open. I didn't see any sign of forced entry, so I figured it was just sloppy work from the previous shift. As I reached inside to plug in my diagnostic laptop, I noticed something sitting on the bottom shelf of the cabinet, right next to the high-voltage cooling fans. It was a silver coffee thermos. I picked it up, thinking it belonged to the guy who left the door open. But when I looked at the bottom, I saw a small piece of blue painter's tape with a name written on it in permanent marker. Alex. My name is Alex, and that was my thermos, the one that I had lost at a gas station nearly 40 miles away 2 weeks prior. The echo on the line. I felt a cold rush of adrenaline. There was no logical way my thermos had ended up inside a locked fiber optic hub in the middle of the wilderness. I checked the cabinet's internal log on my laptop. The last authorized entry was my own 3 weeks ago. However, the log showed a series of manual overrides that had occurred every night at exactly 3:14 a.m. I decided to stay in my van and watch the hub from a distance. I turned off all my lights and sat in the darkness, the only sound being the ticking of my cooling engine. Around 3:10 a.m., my laptop, which was still synced to the hub's local Wi-Fi, made a chirping sound. A notification popped up. Internal intercom active. The hubs have a small built-in phone line, so technicians can talk to the main office if cell service is down. I clicked the audio feed. At first, there was just the sound of the wind. Then I heard breathing. It was heavy and wet, as if someone was standing right next to the microphone inside the cabinet. "The signal is clear tonight, Alex," a voice whispered. It was low, raspy, and sounded like it was coming through a throat of gravel. "But your van is leaking oil. You should check the gasket." I looked down at the pavement beneath my van. In the pale moonlight, I could see a dark, shimmering puddle forming. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't hit anything. Someone had tampered with my vehicle while I was distracted with the cabinet. The labyrinth of fiber. I didn't wait to see who was talking. I slammed the van into gear and floored it. The engine sputtered and groaned. The leak was worse than I thought. I only made it about 2 miles before the engine overheat light flashed red and the van died completely right in the middle of a heavily forested curve. I was in a total dead zone. No cell service, no radio, and my van was a dead weight in the middle of the road. I grabbed my heavy industrial flashlight and a flare and locked myself inside the cabin. That's when I remembered the DAS system. The The company uses distributed acoustic sensing. Basically, they can turn the underground fiber-optic cables into a giant microphone to detect vibrations from digging or vehicles. I opened my laptop, which was still connected to the company's internal network via satellite. I pulled up the DAS map for my current location. On the screen, I saw a series of pulsing red ripples. These ripples represent vibrations on the ground. One set of ripples was my van, but about 50 yards behind me from the direction of Hub 407 was another set of ripples. Something was running towards me. The ripples were moving at an impossible speed, following the exact path of the road. On the screen, I watched as the second set of ripples closed the distance, 50 yards, 30 yards, 10 yards. The ripples stopped right at the back of my van. I sat perfectly still, clutching my flashlight. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear a car. But then, the van gave a slight rhythmic rock, as if someone had stepped onto the rear bumper. The maintenance hatch. I realized then that the field network wasn't just cables and boxes. There were old underground maintenance vaults located every few miles, concrete bunkers used in the 60s for old telegraph lines. I looked at the floor of my van. There was a small circular maintenance hatch in the middle of the road right beneath me. I heard a metallic clink from under the vehicle. Someone wasn't outside the van, they were underneath it, coming up through the manhole. I dove out of the driver's side door and sprinted into the woods. I didn't follow the road. I knew whoever this was had mapped the signals there. I ran through the brush, my flashlight off, guided only by the faint light of the stars. I found a hollowed-out cedar tree and squeezed inside, praying the thermal cameras wouldn't pick me up. I watched my van from the ridge. A figure emerged from underneath the van. It looked like a full-body EMI shielding suit, the kind used to work on high radiation towers. It looked like a tattered silver spacesuit. The figure didn't chase me. They walked to the driver's side of the van, reached inside and picked up my laptop. They typed something quickly, then set the laptop on the roof of the van and walked back to the manhole, disappearing into the earth. The aftermath. I waited until dawn to move. I hiked 5 miles to a ranger station and called the police. When they searched the van, they found the laptop still sitting on the roof. The screen was open to a text document. It was a list of every field auditor who had worked that route for the last 10 years. Next to each name was a status. John D., disconnected. Sarah M., signal lost. Alex T., latency high. The police searched the underground vaults. They found a living center in the vault beneath Hub 407. It was filled with stolen rack servers and high-end surveillance equipment. The technician had been a former network engineer who had gone missing in 2012. He had used his knowledge of the fiber-optic acoustic sensing to turn the entire county into a giant eavesdropping device. He wasn't just watching us, he was listening to the vibrations of our lives through the ground itself. They never found the man in the silver suit. They found a secondary tunnel that led deep into the national forest, but the tracks ended at a rocky creek. I quit the telecommunications industry the next week. I moved to a city and took a job in a high-rise where the only ground beneath me is 40 stories of concrete. But sometimes, when it's very quiet at night, I'll feel a slight vibration in the floor, the hum of the building's wiring or the wind against the glass, and I'll wonder if someone, somewhere deep underground, is watching the ripples of my footsteps, waiting for my signal to drop.